I just realized that that is not the vibe for a Saturday morning. Jarrell, what's going on, my brother? You got audio?
Yep, we got audio over here, man. No, I was spaced out. I was cool.
A little bit, man. It's almost like one of those things where you hit the snooze button. I think there's like a meme where it talks about me dancing in my dream to my alarm. I imagine the song you just kind of like you just said, like spaced out for real. Cool. We're about 5 minutes in. Let's go ahead and get rocking, man. I'm joined by a special guest, and those of you all who have been on the DevOps Coffee chats in the past know it's been a little while. So if I came back, I had to come back with some fire. Myself, I'm JT Taylor, part of the Black IT Academy, joined by a talented young brother, Jarrell, who is also part of the Black IT Academy. This brother here is very, very accomplished, so I'm lucky to have him as a guest today, and he'll probably be on some of the future presentations as well. I'm gonna just go over a few highlights of his resume. two-time AWS certified. I believe he has a developer as well as a solutions architect associate certification, Terraform associate, security plus, network plus. And I think he's studying. He just told me for the Azure 104, which is not an easy test. This guy also has an interview coming up. So in the middle of him doing all of these things, he was able to put something together to showcase for the Black IT Academy, where you know that we're here to for the empowerment and building of Black individuals in the tech atmosphere. So big round of applause for my boy Jarrell. Thank you for joining us this morning. Was there anything that I left out that you want to say to the people?
No, you covered it, man. You you made me sound like a rock star.
Where you are, and we're lucky to have you, and also really excited for what you're going to get into. So maybe if you wouldn't mind, just kind of discussing what we plan to cover today.
Yeah, sure. So, what I'm particularly looking at today is containerization and automation, which is like two very popular skills today. You can't go anywhere without hearing about AI or Kubernetes if you're in the IT industry, and just how valuable that stuff really is in terms of minimizing resources consumed. Um, so that's what this project is. Very basic. Just kind of wanted to center it around Python, which is, I hate to say, essentially the language of automation nowadays. As far as automation tasks, and then also centering it around Docker. So not really getting into any Kubernetes, but really just getting into container life cycles and how to automate those away, or maybe trying to make less human error with them through scripting.
I couldn't find you quick enough, man. That sounds like a plan. And you're right. So AI with a lot of influence, obviously, right now. I think it's important to know how to put things together without AI, but also using it to supplement in some ways as well. And a lot of Python scripting goes into the back end. So people oftentimes forget in my conversations with a lot of folks that are either new or even those that are experienced that have been in the field for a little while, forget that somebody and systems need to control. AI for the most part is just an application at this point, right? Machine
Right.
learning is an applicable application, right? What it can do, creates real world results, but somebody has to script and somebody has to provide the instructions. So cool, man. Let me know if you're ready. I can get into the screen share and then let you kick off.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. So if you can see here on my screen, I just kind of created just a basic folder. I call this project Docker Pie, just because I was hungry. So, so
Fair enough.
let's get into eating. So basically, what this project really dives into, and I'm still trying to figure out this Docker import, but what it really dives into is using this feature in Python known as virtual environments. And when you're looking at containerization and creating production stages and developer stages and test stages and QA stages, trying to figure out what's what in what scope kind of gets kind of confusing. And where that leads a danger to is as far as dependency management, as far as vulnerability management, um, and really configuration management also. So you have this one big mess of not knowing what really is your scope of what somebody really means when they say environment, or when they say container, or when they say we're doing it in this kind of setting. So the reason why I bring up virtual environments is because Python kind of self-manages its dependencies, and you can kind of store a temporary list of dependencies within Python inside of your interpreter here, just using virtual environments. So what does that do for you? Well, that kind of reduces the workforce, or I should say the mental tasking of having to keep track of all your dependencies. If you don't like your dependencies, delete the environment, the virtual environment, start again. So it's a quick and easy way to just really try to get those under control via Python. Um, like JT said, I've also had experience in like Terraform, and so that kind of has its own dependency thing with like state, and do I want to put this inside of Terraform state and things like that. But this is just a much more I would say like simpler way of like just managing small things. Of course, if you have large dependencies, use a professional tool. But for this project we're doing, virtual environment should do fine because we're just spinning up something and then shutting it down. Um, and then the other side of that is containers. Docker by itself doesn't have a lot of dependencies, but what you can build with Docker absolutely is limitless. So that's why I wanted to get into that portion of it and kind of just set out a what I want to say is, what do they call it, JT? Is it left shift thinking? Okay.
Shift left thinking. Before we get into that, though, you mentioned something. I want to ask a quick question. So, what
Sure.
would be the benefit of Docker? Right? You said that you can just about create everything with it. Why? As an average user, say I'm just kind of earlier in my career, what would be
Right.
like the benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Docker kind of traditionally solves the problem. If you read from any book or from any course or however you get the knowledge, is Docker kind of solves the problem of, well, it worked on my computer, which is like a classic developer issue. So Docker takes your program, it takes all of your dependencies for that program, and it wraps it into one nice bunch, in what's known as an image. And then you can take that image, and this is their whole slogan, is you can run it anywhere from there because you have essentially everything that you need squared away in a nice little box, and then you can just virtually send it off to any OS or any machine that has some type of similar configuration. So that's why that's really really neat in terms of today's technology and in terms of keeping track of what's working and what's not inside of production environments.
Got it. So, like an easy way for me to test locally before I go and destroy something that maybe a few hundred people are working on, or
And
10, 20.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Uh,
And then you were talking about, I didn't mean to get you off track, but I did want to cover that for the viewers. You were talking about shift left. Maybe you can break that down a little bit further.
yeah, so for those of you who are unaware, and I learned this during like studying for like my CompTIA Security Plus. So shout out CompTIA. But so left shift thinking or shift left thinking is just basically, let's have the thought of security at the beginning of the process versus towards the end. Traditional waterfall methods are treated security as an afterthought in decades before this, and because IT was still a developing field, it still is, but it was kind of like, okay, we just need to get this out to production so that we can start making money. And IT wasn't really a risk back then because they didn't necessarily know of all the bugs that we know about now, and exposures and threats and attack vectors and things like that. So what that kind of does and what that kind of relates to in this project is, let's make sure our dependencies are locked down from the beginning, and let's make sure that we can test this absolutely locally with just Python on our machine versus having to go into a virtual environment, spin up the instance, and this, that, and the third. Kind of just reducing the workload. And then, of
Got it.
course, you can also, I don't know how many people here are studying Python, but Python also has this feature called packages, where you can kind of package up the dependencies and also ship those off as one. Um, Given that they're Python dependencies, of course. Uh, but yeah, that's what left shift thinking is about. Is just, let's try to be prepared for security incidents from the get go versus being reactionary to them or reactive.
I like that. It's almost like having a guardrail, because people are going to be people and people make mistakes, right? So we can't remove either the people or the mistakes from the process, but how do we set up, like bumpers at a bowling alley, right? So that way,
Right.
less opportunity for the. Okay, I get it. I'm tracking, man. If you wouldn't mind for the 30 and plus club, maybe zooming in a little bit. I'm having a hard time seeing the screen share on VS Code, and then kind of walk us through what we're looking at and explain what the importance is of some of the stuff that you're sharing.
Sure, sure. So we have 4 files here. I just wanted to take four different examples, and I'll make it like a really quick overview. You see the comments in the code, but I also explain. So what I'm focusing on now is trying to get this to go away. But once I have Docker installed, I'm going to initialize it. Of course, I'm going to get the container to run via syntax, Python syntax. But what's important to note is that you can also do this inside of the terminal. Like obviously you have your Docker run and then your image and things like that. But if you can have it scripted within Python, that gives you more leverage to use things like, say, if else conditional commands or conditional statements. And so it gives you a level of control and looping that you just don't have at the terminal without kind of making a terminal ugly. And as a developer and as someone who always seeks to like reduce the workload, you kind of want to keep your terminal from just looking all over the place. It helps with like having to track it back. So that's nice. So we go here, we say create Alpine, that is our image that we're pulling from the Docker Hub, of course. Command, that's our SH. We want to get into this through SH because that's how we're going to work this remotely. So that makes sense. TTY, SCDN open, leave it open for communication. Detach, of course, is true. We don't want it directly attached to, I think it was the computer, like what is it? The words escaping me right now. But yeah, the detach.
No problem. It is Saturday morning. Let's be honest. Let's be real. And would you say for things like this, right? Because not everybody has a walking library of Python. It might not even be something that, as a DevOps engineer, that you have to know in and out. Would this be a good, use case for something like AI, right? You talked about AI in the beginning, where you can maybe like use ChatGPT or other AI tools to, help you with some of the definitions or scripting. What's your take on that, out of curiosity?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI is kind of built on Python in terms of current frameworks and in terms of available tools that are written in Python. So any Python can, I don't want to say easily, but it's the convergent rate is easier or it's probably higher if you start with Python from the get-go and then think about automation later and think, okay, now how can I automate it? That's more of not choosing another language and then having to rewrite. It's more of a, okay, I just need to refactor and start including these libraries. So that's my answer to that. But I didn't want to get too deep into AI for the project, but I thought about it. I was like, ooh, what if I try to run an AI model on the cluster? And I was like, I'm doing this on my laptop. Let me not. This is 16 gigs of RAM. It will not survive.
Man, sometimes part of the process is knowing what's not worth your time, or what not to do. And I think that's a good call out when people are learning things. There's if you look at anything online, there's a whole bunch of buzzwords, and you might say, oh man, well, I want to do that, or I want to do that. But sometimes having like a laser focused approach for one thing, which it sounds like is what you're getting at, Jarrell, probably the best way to go about it. That way you can learn that one thing, a lot better than shotgun spreading your focus. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say this as I'll get back into the project, but I'll say this as advice for those who are just starting out, maybe in the chat. Your focus is in learning at the very beginning of your career, because you don't know what you're into until you stumble upon it, and then you're like, I think this is this is either fun or this is bearable, or hey, I just happen to be good at this, or hey, I really see myself being able to do this, even if I'm not good right now. Which is like, of course, the growth mindset, something preach heavily at BITA. Tell him, JT. He make us believe in all of ourselves. But
appreciate it.
Of course. But at the beginning, you can always kind of figure out what you want to get into and just sort of give everything a try. But somewhere down the line, you do have to organize the process into sort of a queue, is what I would recommend. So this week I'm learning this. Next week I'll deep dive into this, maybe give it 2 weeks. and then I'll move on to something else rather than trying to tackle everything all at once. Difference between student and master isn't just like the action, but it's the judgment of the action. Like JT said, what to do and what not to do. So that's something that you can start practicing early in your career, even as you take on everything, just organizing it and being aware of your time management skills. Kind of word it. So yeah, that was my short little spiel towards the, hey, I'm just getting started, people. Where do I start? I know that's a common question.
Big time, big time. Thank you for covering that too, by the way. And real quick, just to put some validity to that, how long ago did you start your career?
About a year and a half to 2 years now.
Man, that's a lot of talent in such a short amount of time. So if you're going to listen to somebody who's been in your shoes not that long ago and is already, providing presentations and, being Jarrell, he didn't say it and I didn't mention it earlier, but he's actually a mentor within our group helping out other people. So you definitely tuned into the right place if you're earlier in your career or if you're looking for the next step. So that way you can, you can level up, having those good study practices is always helpful. But yeah, man, let's dive in. Don't let me hold you up. I just wanted to pick your brain on that topic real quick.
No, absolutely. You're fine. You're fine. So next here we have our container start. And for those asking, there may be some people unfamiliar with Docker in general. When I say start container, basically, like I said before, it's going to pull the image from Docker Hub. Docker Hub is to be thought of as, let's say, GitHub for Docker. If you know what GitHub is, Docker Hub is kind of like its translation towards Docker, or not really its translation, but Docker's translation towards GitHub, I should say. So you're going to pull the image, which is all the dependencies, the application itself, any packages that it'll probably need installed in order to work. Is going to pull that, is going to copy that over to the machine that started. We're then going to reload the container, so shut it off, turn it right back on, and then run ls-la to see what's all within the container. And then from there, container stop, of course, but stopping it does not remove it. So you need to also do container remove. And then, of course, print container cleanup towards the end there. So that's it for just like a basic container. The mounted container is a little bit more complex in that I just wanted to kind of show off that inside of your container, you can set up a file system or a shared file system, really. So what you want your container to be is completely on you. The container itself is just the mini piece of virtualized hardware that's being used to run this program or this application. And so, like I said here, I got 16 RAMs on this computer, about 500 gigabytes worth of memory. So if I was trying to run, like, say, on which part? I saw the what? So like the virtualized. Okay, so let me take a step back. Maybe the virtualized. You're referring to the virtualized. Right now, I'm sitting at my hardware at my laptop, but that can be logically divvied into pieces, such as I want to dedicate 2 RAMs of storage, maybe to my Docker container. And again, my container is just my virtualized infrastructure. So Docker's not literally cutting a piece out of my laptop, but it is reorganizing it in a logical way that it can only be accessed for its intended purpose, which in this case would be the Docker container. If that makes any better sense. Does that make any better sense for you? Yes, no?
It was clear to me. It was clear to me. Yeah. So I think this is a good moment to break. If anybody has any questions, feel free to provide them into chat. I'll post them on the screen. Jarrell obviously is handling some of these questions in real time. This is all for our viewers and those that are interested in learning. So if you have any specific questions, this is very, very informal. So throw them in the chat and I'll be helping to moderate those. So appreciate it.
Sure thing. Okay. So our mounted container, like I said before, this is still a container. This is just a separate container that now has a file system. So the container itself is just the virtualized infrastructure um, until you put an image inside of it, which is essentially the software that you want to run on it. So for this particular software, I didn't want to install anything until the package installation Python file, which is what we're getting to next. But I wanted to instead set up a sort of file system. So what did I do? I imported Docker again. I got it attached to a variable named client, created my host directory. That's what that is short for right there. Went into my OS library dash path dot absolute path dash shared data. So what that's going to do is create the host directory, make my file system, which I believe is hierarchical. It's kind of just like this down here. I'm actually in YSL for for Windows, so it'll pretty much produce the same thing. And then containers that create Alpine. Again, that's where we're getting the image from. That's the name of the image actually that we're pulling from Docker Hub. And if you're asking yourself, well, can I just name mine Alpine? Yeah, you can name the container Alpine. The image name is going to stay the same because each name is uniquely registered instead of Docker Hub. So what you name the container doesn't as much matter as making sure that you're pulling the right image and not having a misspelling or something like that. So again, we have SCE open, true. We have true for TTL, and then our mounts. And this is kind of what we wanted to mount onto the Docker container. Okay, so pause and break for a second. What do I mean when I say mount? You're probably saying to yourself, Drill, this isn't a horse. No, it's not. But you can attach things to a container, and that's known as mounting. Now, whether that thing be a physical device or whether it just be more separated storage in terms of virtualization, that's up to you. But when you attach something that was not originally created with the container, that's more than likely known as your mount point. So what can you mount? File systems, other applications, another container that's known as a sidecar kind of architecture. I won't be getting into it, don't worry. These are just words for you to like maybe recall later if you want to like dig into them. But there's a whole lot of things that you can mount in terms of this wasn't originally with the container. Now I want to attach it after it's been created. So right here, my top file directory is going to be -app, and then my source is of course going to be from the .shared data. So it's going to go .shared data -app. It's going to bind to the mount, which means that they're going to share a connection, a secured connection. And then from there, it goes into, again, container start, create, which is basically what touch is, create app dash container, created file, text file, and then echo hello from container to the app.message.txt file. And then list files from container perspective, because again, the container is just even better, a miniaturized laptop. Think of it like that. It's a laptop inside of my laptop. So I can run it with a head, which means with visuals like you're seeing here, or I can run it headless and just literally do everything from the deep, dark, cold terminal. That's probably like what you used to like seeing in movies. So those are what those two terms mean. But yeah, so it's going to, again, list out everything that's inside of -app. It's going to print files and container, and then it's going to list that out inside of a list and tell you what all files should be there, which at that point should only be messages.txt and container created file.txt. And then it's going to print back over here on the host machine. Okay, so those are those two. Before I get into the package installation and the completed workflow, does anybody have any sort of questions for me? Am I doing a good job explaining? Are we kind of still on the same page? Let me know.
I think we're
All
good
right.
to keep rocking, man. I'm clear on my end. It seems like the chat is good and tracking with you.
All right. Cool. 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 All right. So next, I wanted to get into this package installation Python file. So we're still using docker.py, well, dockerpy. Um, again, we go over the creating a client for the host. We go over that again. Um, I'm assuming everybody here is familiar with like host and client, but just in case you aren't, host, kind of think of host as hosting the virtual machines or the containers, which means kind of think of host as the hotel. That's the hotel manager. He's and this laptop is the hotel. Um, so your host is the one that's distributing storage. Well, not distributing storage, but I should say distributing information to clients. The host stays here at the hotel on this laptop. The clients come in, take their information. Does that kind of make sense? So that's that. If it doesn't make sense, let me know. I know I'll be rambling sometimes. And then our image is named exactly this. That's the one again that we're pulling from Docker Hub. We're doing command bash, TTL true, standard in, open true, of course. And then let's do container start, update result, apt-get-update. So container.execute.run, I know I didn't explain this before in the prior two, but this lets you actually run, as you can see, this lets you run command. So for the question, okay, it lets you run commands, but what is apt-get? Well, apt-get. So that's particularly used based on your Linux distribution. So Linux is kind of like ice cream. There's all sorts of flavors. But apt-get is most used with, I want to say the Borean flavor like OS, which is kind of like standard. So that's particularly the one you want to use. Me myself, I'm inside of not Y, WSL, but I'm using, like you see, Python for most of my commands here. So I'm typing pip3, but I can also go in here and type in bash commands, which will actually run. Let me see if this takes same. This is also Ubuntu. Well, at least read the packaging list. So yeah, it would be able to run. This is just a permissions error more than anything, but it is functional. So then I get down to installing Python by using the apt-get install -3 Python command. Check the versioning, install request. Request is a package, is a HTTP library written for humans. So pretty easy to read in most cases. And then from there, this is literally running a Python script inside of terminal, which is another reason why people absolutely clamor to it and kind of love it. You can actually just type out your Python code after the Python 3 flooded, know that you want to use the Python 3 interpreter, and then just literally say, hey, import request, what's the version of request? So yeah, you can absolutely do that. And then of course, again, container stop, container remove. And then the completed workflow here is slightly more complicated with the little cleanup section and the dependencies here, but it's nothing to fear in all absolutely like reality. So what do we have here? We have our Docker, we have our OS again. Of course, in Python, we always go back to defining what is our main function. And that's basically the starting point, I should say the entry, the index for your project or for your application or whatever you're trying to do. So again, we go client, we set up a separate I should say file system named .workspace. Um, exists equals okay. Exists underscore okay equals true, of course. And then we get into the script content that we're going to create on the host and then send to the container inside. So this is kind of replicating what we saw back in mounted containers as far as touch and create this content or this file or this text file. This sort of replicates the same thing here. It's just the file is being written out and then stuck into the container with the open dot os kind of function. So this is going to write to it. And then, so now we're going to create the container, pull our image, of course, go back to our mount. What do we want to mount this to? Well, of course, the mount that we just created up here. And again, the mount is just nothing more than a file system. So we go back here to container start. If we wanted to install our dependencies, we could also do that via the command line or via, hey, run this in the command line via the execute underscore run function. We could do that again in order to make the script executable, run it. So what this is, I don't know if there's an exact name for this, but it's a very interesting technique of or maybe it's called interpolation. I could be potentially wrong with those. Research me on that. But the art of just taking a language like Bash, for example, and injecting it into Python. So now you kind of have you have singularity in terms of I need to use this in this format, so I can just write it literally to Bash. And then there's also the added benefit of, like I said before, control loops and execution flows. So not only can I use Bash when I need to or when I want to, I can also control it without having to open up a separate terminal, essentially, or without a second view. And then the workflow is completed at the end, of course, with the stop, remove it, if name equals main, then go ahead and run the main function. So that's that on that little spill. I was trying to see if I can get an up and working demo for you guys. I'm still unfortunately dealing with a Python file path dependency. I got to change it like beside it inside of my environmental settings, not environmental settings, environmental variable. But as soon as I do that, I will push this to like GitHub just so you can play around with it and probably do more with it. This is a combination for those that want to learn Linux and Python and kind of want to get a soft understanding of containerization and just what Docker can do and what it can't do and what it's about generally.
Number one, thank you for the explanation. And how about these metaphors and analogies, bro? Jarrell is a poet, man. I got a container similar to a laptop inside of a laptop. The host being the the hotel manager. I never really thought about it that way, and it's a good way to conceptualize some of these. Because let's keep it real. Some of these, I guess, ideologies can be a little bit complex. So putting it in a common language that you can understand with everyday things, I think is helpful. And I'm glad that you, without really even trying, it just kind of smoothly came out. So
listen, that's what I'm telling you, that's what I practiced over the last 2 years. I don't really speak. I didn't really start to speak Tekkenese all that well until I was like, okay, how can I reduce this down to something that I know, that I already know, that I'm culturally aware of, kind of ordeal. And then that's when it started clicking for me. But if you ask for like textbook definitions of things, I'm like, unless it's like something I recently researched, it's like, okay, I need to refer back to my analogies. Underrated tool. Yeah.
For sure. And that makes a good point too, because sometimes we get lost in the sauce and tend to forget about the purpose I think it's probably more important that you know the purpose of the thing that you're trying to do than
Yeah.
just knowing, the definition or whatever. It's like, this is what I would use something like this or this process for in this example. So if I'm looking at this, and I'm sure somebody's probably thinking this in the chat or on the recording later on, Python essentially is just when somebody says Python script, it looks like a recipe, like cookbook, right? We're providing a bunch of instructions. Some are complicated, some are, a little bit more simple and human readable. But would that be fair to say, or do you look at Python a little bit differently in your learning process?
No, that's definitely fair to say. With what I've studied in Python and just what I've read about Python, it's meant to be a simple language. It's meant to be human readable. Is that always the case off of first glance? No. But that's just with any language you write. You can write the world's most complex JavaScript function if you want to. It's not going to help anybody on the team unless you're like senior levels.
Right.
But Python is meant to is structured as an object as I want to make sure I'm not just misquoting here, like an objective oriented language. So everything is essentially an object. Well, that's JavaScript. I'm sorry, I'd be confusing my languages. But Python is meant to be, in essence, a step-by-step kind of language. As long as you can express it in thought, it can kind of translate to Python because it's like, how would I say this as a sentence? That's the best Python programming example I can think of, is explicitly naming your variables, explicitly naming your functions, and then because of the way that Python reads and it's structured with the tabs, it kind of just reads like a list.
That makes sense. And somebody explained it a long time ago for Java. So each Java function serves as kind of like, maybe one is cookie, the other one is pie, right? And then under pie, it has, specific. I think you even mentioned pie in the beginning of the conversation. So we're just gonna keep up with the analogies for food, but it gives you that recipe for that function. So say you go to one person's cookout and they don't like pie, but they like cookies. So you use the cookie function and so forth. And there's different, placements for that. For anybody watching or tuning in, what Jarrell just mentioned about object-oriented programming, I went ahead and put a link there for that. And then there's also a reference for the different Linux distributions. If you're security focused, you might look at something like Kali. If you're more network focused, you'll definitely run across Ubuntu. For object-oriented, my dog is barking. Anyway, for object-oriented programming, Python does fit within that list. So does Java, C++, I think C, and a few others. So if you're interested in DevOps and development in general, you'll hear a lot of these terms that Jarrell is blessing us with today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to make sure I covered every angle of this thing. There's so much that you can get into with just simple projects. That's, if I could take a second for like those just beginning, or even those that are maybe in the middle of their career, the simple projects you can attack from so many angles nowadays. Whether those be your own views, whether those be group peer review, whether that be AI, you can take a project and spin it almost into any kind of way, whether you want it to spin towards compliance, something as complex as that, whether you want it to just spin towards technical presentation, whether you want it to spin towards presentation, whether you want it to spin towards business outcomes and things like that. What really matters is starting with the simple projects like these and then just figuring out which way you want to spin it next. Treat it more like a Rubik's Cube than a trophy case, is what I'll say.
That's a bar.
That's a bar?
That's a bar, boy. So you're completing different sides. Break that down a little bit further, because I think people are going to be stuck on the people are going to have to catch up with that. That took me a second, but people are more focused on the trophy case. And what do you mean by the Rubik's Cube? Like, break that down a little bit further.
So that's a bar. Okay. So what I mean, I don't be doing this intentionally. This is my brain. This is how I figure stuff out. But essentially, in a Rubik's Cube, even when you have it perfectly figured out, maybe that's not the design that you want. maybe you're aiming to design something on the Rubik's cube, like a cross on each side, or maybe you're just stuck with the Rubik's cube, but you're constantly changing it to fit into the perception that you want, whether that be all sides perfect, whether that be one side is this side, opposite color, whatever it is meant to be changed to your liking and what you want to present, versus a trophy case where nobody is supposed to touch this. Does that, I don't know if that makes it better.
So a lot more inclusive, and then genuinely something that you're interested in outside of just saying, "Hey, I did this thing that maybe 2,000 other people did." Um,
Right.
okay, that makes sense. We got a question from the chat, Miss Sunshine. What would be a good beginner-friendly project? I'm sure Jarrell's got plenty of them.
I do, but I'm gonna strip it down to the basics for you. I won't even give a specific suggestion, but I will give you on how you know it's a good beginner friendly project. That's valuable. Um, so one is strain yourself, but don't over strain yourself. Um, I've tackled Python before. I've tackled containers before separately, and then I've tackled Linux by itself before separately. Um, and that kind of refers back to like the first advice that I gave was like, yeah, it's cool. If you want to go after everything, but have a set schedule for when you're going to go after what's next and what you're focusing on now. Um, so find something that stresses your brain just a little bit. Maybe you don't get it on first read, and that's not something that you can exactly predict. But if you're reading into a subject for like 2 hours and you're like, yeah, this ain't getting it, then take it down a level, or have Chat GPT or even a person from the BITA group break it down for you into something that you can understand, and then start there. Start with your own understanding, and then start. Okay, I'm sorry. I should rephrase that. Start with others' understanding and turn it into your own understanding. That's what I meant to say. Um, and then from there, just again take the Rubik's cube approach. If you get 3 things done on this project, however simple they are, you can grow from that. You can go from any direction from that. Um, so never look at it as much as, oh, this project is complete, as is, okay, I got one side of this Rubik's cube figured out. This function works today. Maybe tomorrow when I push it into production, it won't. But hey, that's tomorrow's problem. you know? And that also builds resilience. And that's what a good beginner friendly project should do. It should build your resilience. It should make you want to learn more. And it should be something that you're genuinely interested in, something that's piqued your brain. As far as actual projects, give me a specific, and then I'll connect with you. Got a specific field.
Do you have some number one? I really like the fact that you took it a higher level, right? Start with some of these principles, right? This is what you're looking for in a good project, because there's thousands, right? I think you can go to dev posts, you can go to Reddit, and there's going to be a lot. I think, and even AI obviously can generate you some projects. So, but if it doesn't do the things that you need it to do, then what good is it? Or you're going to lose patience really quickly. So, do you have like, maybe you can just give an example of one project that you did that you thought, man, like this really helped set me up for where I am today?
Yeah, yeah. So I do a solid. I'll do one from before, and I do one that I'm working on now. Um, so before, about a year back, I was working on this application for this high school recruitment sort of company. So what they wanted essentially was an app that compared high school students with college coaches, and then kind of just circumvent the recruiter has to come see you process. Um, and I thought at the time, like, okay, this is a really cool idea. So I'm building on the back end, the front end is already done. And even though I have my solution architect associate at the time, I have my developer associate at the time. The projects that I sort of got into, as far as debugging, as far as troubleshooting, as far as, okay, why isn't this hooking up to this system? or why isn't this component communicating with this system? Oh, you need to change out the certificate. Okay. It kind of, I always knew I was curious, but it kind of led me into a process of, I want to kind of create a process and a structure around my curiosity and decide what's curious and what do I have to learn now. So that kind of structured me around that. And then that kind of just took my problem solving skills to what I consider like the next level. Primarily because it didn't change what I did, it changed how I thought about what I was doing. And that's a really powerful tool. And then a project from now that I'm like kind of like inching my way towards. I'm a procrastinator. I won't even cap to y'all. That I'm kind of like inching towards now. I'm over there side eyeing AI and ML, and I'm like, I don't want to be part of a fad, which absolutely isn't a fad. But like, okay, like I said before, I'm scheduling you out. That's keeping curiosity in check. But no, the project that I plan on working on in the future is just this kind of file, like talking to your files in a Copilot kind of way, and just asking it to do things and developing an AI agent around that, and seeing where I get that. Because boy, I'm tired of Windows file hierarchy. I can't find nothing. I just plan on creating an AI agent for it to find the files for me. I don't know where I put my 37 revision resume. You're gonna have to find that for me, Mr. AI.
I think that's practical. I mean, if you're gonna build tools, build something that you actually need. Yeah, and that people can use. That's
right.
That's why they exist.
Yeah. Necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. So I was like, yeah, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person going through with like troubles on like this traditional file system. So I'm like, let's see what we can do about it. But like I said, I'll be tackling that later on as I like dive deeper into like my infrastructure stuff first and make sure I got those nails bedded down and stuff like that.
For sure. So while you could take influences from different projects that people have done or things that you've seen online, one of the best ways is also what you just mentioned is find a problem that you wish that there was a solution for and be the solution, right? Even if it's a low level solution for that problem, especially with AI, you can actually do some things. So am I hearing that there's going to be a like an AI vibe coding session with Jarrell coming up soon, or what?
Listen, if you guys want to join in, man. My evenings just freed up. So I'll at least be in the study lounge probably on Tuesdays and Thursdays, from like let's say 7 to 9. Just vibing out, trying to get some stuff done. And then if you want to come and join, or you give your suggestions, or you have feedback or whatever, hey, I'm here. I consider myself a pretty chill dude. I just like to read my books, play my guitar.
I didn't even know that you play guitar. We gotta have a separate chat. But yeah, as a good transition into the Discord. So I know people are watching the stream, and then also this is going to be recorded and on YouTube and Twitch for a little while for people to download it. So if you called us after the fact, just know that we have a Discord as well that Jarrell is talking about, where it's a community of our people that are focused on helping our people as well. And we have a lot more informal conversations there where we just get together, have study sessions, vibe coding sessions, hackathon ideas, and even business ideas as well. So if you haven't already joined the Discord, I'll leave the link inside the chat for you all to join. Tisha says she brought some steak and eggs. You said it like it's not a big deal, man. That sounds good as hell. Right. I asked for donuts. She said, straight up, man. We over here talk about pies, cookies, and she got the real protein, man. We missing out. We cutting up this morning, man. We having fun. Jarrell, hey yo, so Sunshine, Tisha, anybody in the chat that has any questions for Jarrell? I don't want to take up too much more of your time, so we'll open it up for some additional questions before we start to wrap up.
Sure, absolutely.
And while we're waiting for some of those questions to come in, what other advice do you have? You dropped some gems today. I can't thank you enough for your time. The walkthrough, the explanation, the metaphors and similes, and all of those things. Really, really helpful for people to learn and apply. So, what other advice or things did you want to leave the people with while we're waiting for some questions to come in?
Yeah, sure. Just generally, I would say, so you can have the know-how, and still not have the experience, because experience comes with time. But don't worry about the experience so much as worry about the. And when I say experience, I mean like years of experience. What's more important in those terms is your mindset to grow, because nobody obviously in tech knows everything. If that was your goal setting out, coming from a person that had the same mindset 2 years ago, it's a lot out there. It's a lot out there. And it's only growing more each and every day. So while you can't learn everything, learn to learn just in time, or learn to learn in a sustainable manner, I should say. So that's one thing. Another is to just read. There's a lot of good books out there on how to get into programming, on how to get into DevOps, on how to get into security, on how to get into compliance and governance. Um, as long as you set aside time for knowledge, maybe on a daily or a weekly basis, success will set its time aside for you. So that's how I feel about that. Set aside time for the work, and the work will set aside time for you, for your moment to shine. So those are two things that I always keep in mind in terms of mindset, um, when I'm just reading or trying to gain knowledge. Um, Anything else I'm thinking about? Oh, for those of you interested, and I've talked to JT about this, and I've talked to Kurt about this. Speaking of reading, and I don't know if you may have heard it, but if you haven't, I'll name drop now. Uh, the Phoenix Project and the Unicorn Project. Um, Not the most current books on like what the current IT environment looks like, but it has a few good overarching themes of what type of work you'll encounter, what are typical bottlenecks between IT departments and the overall business, and things like that. So I came to JT and Kurt, who is Rascal in the Discord. You guys know him. I came to them with the idea of doing kind of tabletop exercises based on narratives from tech books or tech stories. So that's currently in the works. So we'll try to have more of these, and maybe have some role play to go along with it, just to kind of reflect more real world practical scenarios, and to also strengthen soft skills, or to show what soft skills look like on display. So stay tuned for that. I'll be dropping more in the chat. If you want to join, just hit me, hit JT, hit Kurt. We'll add you to the channel. Yeah, that's all I wanted to give out on that.
Cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour. Be on the lookout. So, Black IT Academy, we are cooking. We are 501c3 certified nonprofit organization, bringing you information just like this in a digestible format. And I didn't know when I invited Jarrell, or when he had reached out to me to showcase some of his skills, that he was also a poet, um, to make it so digestible on this presentation, which is helpful. So I posted some links for some of the things that he mentioned, the Phoenix Project. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the Discord. Reach out to us. You can also comment on this video even after it's posted. Our team will follow up with you. And on that topic, man, I just really want to thank you, Jarrell, for your time, your expertise, your poetry, flowetry, all the above, brother. Wishing you the best. Also, everybody, make sure that you put up a prayer for our brother Jarrell. He's got an interview. This guy is not just talking about it, man. He's doing it. He's got an interview coming up. What'd you say? Tuesday, Wednesday? Wednesday. So we all put him in our good prayers. But besides that, man, everybody have a good rest of your weekend. Peace. Thank you for chilling with us today.
Thanks again, JT.
Indeed.